All right, y'all, welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you're a returning user. If you're not, click that subscribe button, click that like button, do all that good stuff. My channel, I haven't been doing very many full-length videos because honestly they take a long time. But when you look at the little bit of income my channel generates, it usually comes from the full-length videos. But interesting enough, like 97% of my viewers are not subscribers. They're just people that happen along my videos. So I'd like to change that. Let's see if we can get some subscribers hopping through here. If you like this video, subscribe, like it, share it with some friends. It'll help me out a little bit. If you like Pikachu, do the same thing. Like the video. If you don't like Pikachu, then just pretend you never saw him, okay? I like Pikachu. Anyway. 44 Magnum. Wow. If you're watching this video, probably this gun does not need an introduction from you. This is one of the most iconic revolvers, probably one of the most iconic guns that there is, and especially when you start talking about film history, movie history, and we'll get to that. But what I wanted to talk about today, to start out is just kind of the history of behind the 44 Magnum. Now, this one is a Smith & Wesson Model 29. And you can see that it is a, maybe you can see that, maybe you can't, but it is a -3 model. I don't know if y'all get in there and see that. -3. Now, what that means is that this one was made, I think the -3s came out in 1982, if I remember right. Now, this particular model, the Model 29, officially came out in 1955. At that time, it was a big in-frame revolver chambered in 44 Magnum. I don't really remember if they called it anything or not. Smith & Wesson didn't start calling their guns by number until 1957, at which point this became the Model 29. But the history behind it is a lot of it's tied to a guy named Elmer Keith. I'll drop in a picture of Elmer here if I remember to when I'm doing the editing on this video. But Elmer was also known for bringing the 357 Magnum to light, kind of the same way. He played around with 44 Special. He liked the big, heavy bullets that come out of a 44 Special. You can load them up to like 240 grain. I think you can get some bigger ones than that, like big 240 grain semi-wad cutters and whatnot. Lots of lead moving down range. But a 44 Special, you can only get about, I think on a 240 grain of 44 Special, you might get 700-800 feet per second, like in a 6-inch. Maybe not quite that much. I don't know for sure on the ballistics. He wanted something faster. He wanted this gun. He designed this gun really to be for hunting or protection against grizzly bears, large, dangerous game. At no point, I don't think he had any intention for this to ever be like a self-defense gun, even though today that's what a lot of people have these for, especially with some of the smaller, lighter weight ammo like 165 grain hollow points and whatnot. But yeah, he kind of played around with the 44 Special and started really loading it to its limits, pushing it higher and higher and higher, and then they made the 44 Magnum. Now, a 44 Magnum, I don't have a Special out here, but a 44 Magnum bullet is a little bit longer than a 44 Special. It's the same diameter, just a little bit longer. Now, the reason for that is not really that they need the extra room for the powder, but that might be some of it. But it's mostly because if a gun is chambered in 44 Magnum, it can take the longer bullets. If a gun is only chambered in 44 Special, you can't put a Magnum round in it because it just won't seat all the way. Where they have the little cylinder ring in there, it won't seat all the way, which is also a safety thing. It keeps someone from putting a 44 Magnum round into a 44 Special. Now, you can do the opposite. You can put 44 Specials in here. I think you can put, what's that old caliber? 44 Russian, if I remember right. I might be wrong in that, but for sure, you can put 44 Specials in here, and it's a much tamer load to shoot. But yeah, Elmer Keith, he wanted a gun that was essentially something, a big bore revolver. This one's got a little bit of bluing wear on it. This one's not perfect, but it's pretty much all I could afford, to be honest with you. I'll tell you the story behind that here in a second too. But he wanted a big bore revolver that, you could use for hunting with. Large, big game like grizzlies, whatnot, moose. You don't ever want to get a ticked off moose coming after you, that's for sure. But this one is pretty clean. If I remember right, I've got some chips in the grip on one of the, there's a little grip chip right there. But overall, it's pretty clean. Now, I wish it was a 29-2 or earlier. What the Smith guy's going to tell you about that is the -2 models and earlier still had the pin barrel by Smith & Wesson. This one does not have the pin. This was the first year. I think this one was actually made in '83, so it's an early -3. But that's when they stopped putting the pin in, and also they stopped recessing the cylinders. You can see this does not have a recessed cylinder. The pre-3 models, they had the cylinder recessed, so when you loaded the round, it was countersunk in there. And what that did, in my opinion, that makes it harder to clean, which is for sure. But when you close the cylinder, you didn't have this gap. The cylinder was a lot of times pushed up a little bit tighter to the front of it. I mean, you still had a little bit of gap, and but you didn't have this gap. But I kind of like it like this personally. Number one, it's easier to clean. To me, if a gun is a shooter, if something you're going to be shooting a lot, it's easier to clean, and then you can quickly look in here and tell if it's loaded. You can tell. Now, of course, that won't tell you if the cartridge are spent, but it sure will tell you if there's a cartridge in there. You can just kind of peek into the side of it. But that's just my personal opinion. I do wish it was another one because they're worth more. But yeah, and a lot of people call that PNR, pinned and recess, is what you'll see like on a lot of the Smith & Wesson, when people are talking Smith & Wesson talk about them and everything. Pinned and recessed cylinders. Pin barrels, recessed cylinders. But I tell you, just a beautiful gun. I like how the 44 Magnum is like in a small font, just almost understated, just 44 Magnum. No BS or whatever. That's what caliber this thing is. And the same with Smith & Wesson on the barrel. I like that about Smith & Wessons of this era. The way it's just nice, simple, all caps, smallish font. You have a nice mark over here with it. And then you've got the Springfield information, whatnot over here. This one's got a target trigger, a wider trigger on it, target hammer, and then this is what they usually call target grips. So traditionally you would call this a triple T as well. Target hammer, target trigger, target grips. I don't know if the 44 Magnums people, if they might have all came like that. I don't know for sure, to be honest with you. But it does have an adjustable rear sight. But two quick little anecdotes about this. Well, I'll try to make them quick. I never owned a 44 Magnum until last year. As many of you know, my father had a stroke early last year. He came to live with us down here in Texas, and we took good care of him for about 6 or 7 months, and he wanted to go back home. And shortly after he got back home, he collapsed one day, and we lost him, was the ultimate story on it. He collapsed in his house and was in the hospital for about a week before he passed. But he had told me before, he was a gun guy. Not so much later in life, but he's the one that really got me into guns. When he passed away, he only owned 3 or 4 guns probably. But he had told me one time, this was last year or sometime when he was living with us. He said, Bubby, and he called me Bubby. He said, Bub, when I die, I want you to take the money from my wallet, however much cash in there, and go buy you the nicest gun you can buy with it. And that's what I did. That's where the money for this came from. When Dad passed away, I went to his word. I'd never owned a 44 Magnum before, and I wanted to get something that I know he would have loved. Especially the late 20s, mid 30s, early 40s version of Dad. He would have loved to shoot this thing. He liked things that made a big boom, and we had an old step-side Ford pickup bed at our house up in Kansas. This was in the late 70s probably, and that was our go-to thing to shoot. Anytime we got a new gun, we'd go out and shoot that old pickup bed, see how much big of a dent it would put, or see if it would go all the way through it. I remember we shot that with many different calibers, and the first time we ever had something penetrate all the way through it was with a full power 357 mag with some semi-wide cutters in it. That thing just blew right through it. But yeah, so this was essentially a gift from my dad for me after we passed. So this is a very, very special gun to me. One of those ones that I'll never let go. You know, to be one that I'll have to pry off my dead body, so to speak. But there is another thing that made these Model 29s famous. In 1971, we were introduced to Dirty Harry. And you probably can't find a Model 29 44 mag video anywhere on YouTube without a mention of Dirty Harry. But Clint Eastwood was the man. A lot of us already knew Clint from the Westerns that he had done extensively. He was on some TV series, things like that. You know, he was just a big, tough guy, and he became Harry Callahan, San Francisco detective, homicide investigator, actually. He was a homicide detective. And this was his gun of choice. Now, Harry, in the original movie, he carried a Model 29, and it was actually a 6.5-inch barrel. At that time, this one is a 6-inch, but at some point they switched from 6.5 to 6. I don't remember when that was. Maybe it was when they stopped doing pin and recess. I don't know for sure. I should have known that information. I don't remember. If I do remember, I'll drop in a year right here that says the year they stopped doing the 6.5 and switched to the 6-inch barrel. But his was a 6.5. But wow, I mean, you talk about shockwaves. Before that movie, the only people who really wanted the 44 Magnum were gun nut, gun hunters, maybe the occasional law enforcement guy. Maybe that's a big maybe. I think it was just such a niche gun that they didn't have a lot of them. There wasn't a lot of ammo there. Smith & Wesson wasn't making a lot of them. I'd be interested to see what production numbers were prior to 1971. But man, when that movie came out and you see Clint Eastwood waving this thing around and saying, this is the most powerful handgun in the world, it'll blow your head clean off. You know, of course, that's the famous line from the original Dirty Harry movie. Boy, I tell you, people wanted them. And from my understanding, I was just a wee lad back in those days in 71. These were hard to get for a lot of years. I mean, very hard to get. I think Hickok has got an 8-inch Model 29 that he got mid-70s, if I remember right. He said even then it was still hard to get 6-inch Model 29s. But it just sent a huge wave through the industry. People who never even had owned a gun before were wanting to get a 44 Magnum. They had to have the most powerful handgun in the world, you know, that would blow. And it held that title for quite a few years, you know. And of course, nowadays, I mean, there's always niche cartridges and stuff like that. You know, you got people making pistols and 45-70, 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. There's all kinds of guns that are technically more powerful, but you know, none of them have the romanticism or the charm of the 44 Magnum. So yeah, when Dirty Harry came out, that was my introduction to 44 Magnum. I probably saw the first Dirty Harry movie. It came out in 71, I think, was the first Dirty Harry movie. Then they had a sequel maybe in 73, 74. I don't know how many Dirty Harry films they did over the years. Let me see. There was the first one. Then there was the Enforcer. There was the Gauntlet. There was Sudden Impact. There was Death Pool. Maybe I'm missing some. What is that, 4 or 5? I'll drop in the number down here. I'll look it up when I do the editing, drop in how many different movies they had that had Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry. And he used this just about exclusively in all of them except for Sudden Impact. In Sudden Impact, there's a scene where he's on a dock and some bad guys are beating him up. These guys jumped him and stuff like that, and he pulls out his Model 29. They kick it out of his hand and they kick it off in the ocean. Well, after that scene, Harry goes back to his hotel room, sees that his friend Horace, which was one of his friends, had been killed by these same bad guys. And earlier in the movie, he had a scene in the woods where he was shooting with Horace, and they introduced the AMT 44 Magnum Auto Mag in that scene. and Harry happened to have that automag with him in that room. I think that thing had a 8 or a 10-inch barrel. I think it's a 10-inch barrel on the one they used in the film. But yeah, Harry gets that automag and takes care of business. If you've never seen it, Sudden Impact, I think it came out in 1983, 82 or 83. I think it was 83 if I remember right. Good movie. Has Sonderlock in it. Of course, all of Eastwood's movies had Sonderlocks in the 70s and 80s because they were a thing. You know, they were dating and whatnot. But yeah, that's what brought this gun to life, in my opinion, was the Dirty Harry whipping one of these out. And I'm not going to be all cliche and quote you all the Dirty Harry lines and stuff like that. You know, there's plenty of videos on YouTube where you can see them. But I wanted one, and yeah, you know, this was something that Dad got for me, and I'm proud to say that. So let me know what y'all think of this beautiful weapon. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments. I try to respond to the comments as quick as I can, but sometimes I get a little bit behind. And remember what I told you early in the video, especially if you're still hanging out, click that subscribe button, click that like button, share it with some people and everything. I'm trying to get some momentum going on my channel, and I'm going to start trying to do at least every 2 weeks, do a full-length video like this. Thanks for watching, y'all. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time.